university students to bring them into the advice profession. So jumping up and down, ranting and raving at universities around financial planning as a career path. And then, the profession cries out for talent, shortage. This year, both these businesses, including you on a panel, we had 250 students in the offices of Deakin University downtown here. And eight and a half or 9 out of 10 of them said, this is a career we didn't know about and we're interested in. So of the 250, I think we got 4 of them jobs out the back of it. So
is that a good success rate or a poor success rate?
Well, I don't know the numbers. There's only so long you can bring 250 people into a room and say how exciting is this profession, and they need you, and then the profession doesn't take them.
Yeah.
So in my mind, and this has taken 13 years of kind of looking at it, going, where's this sort of fall? We do this exercise of ranting and raving about creating a really great picture of a career path and advice. We work with students around coaching and mentoring and connect them with advice firms, and we build software to help them manage their career. The gap is that they're not actually finding homes in the profession, and I think that's a function. We talked on Friday about risk commissions and so forth. I think that the problem's even further back than thinking that this next generation thinking the Royal Commission and financial planning's not great, it's a sales culture and there's not enough commission. I don't even think that's the problem, because as far as I know, the university students we're working with now were not watching the Royal Commission unfold on YouTube like the rest of us. Like, it wasn't a thing. They could not care less. The problem is it's an awareness exercise, I think, around it as a career path. So we do that, and we bring these young people in, but then we need to, so the supply problem I don't think is going to be a problem if we can make the process into the profession a little bit smoother. And if you have, I think it was 600 licenses now or something like that. I can't remember. I was reading the advisor ratings numbers this morning actually. There's just no structural ability there's a lack of structural ability for the profession to actually take people through a career path and a pathway and a PY. And if you have a big license that's got 100 people going through a PY, and they're all 10% of it's run by the licensee, then you have 90% of the professional year experience run by suburban advice firms. And there's, if it's all bell curve, there's going to be some advice firms that are delivering a magic experience for the next generation coming through in a professional year, the best of breed, the best outcome possible to grow the future professional. But then also we're leaving it to a bunch of businesses who probably don't have the skill set or the capability or the capacity to actually give a really good outcome. And I think there was a data point. I also saw that 20% of new advisors now leave within 2 years of becoming an advisor. So they go through all the hard work to become an advisor, and they go, this is not what I want to be, and they leave.
Okay, so you've identified a few things there.
Yeah.
We seem to be agreed that there's no issue with demand for financial advice, and you're putting it, suggesting that there really should be no issue with supply of financial advisors.
No.
It's more the processes and the logistics that's the issue.
I think so.
Which needs to be the number one point, or I guess friction point that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, and I don't think we need to make it easier. Like, I think it's important that we've raised education standards, and I think it's important that we have, we increase the professionalism in the place, and that's all positive. But if for a small business to run a cost centre I think all the ingredients are here for the recipe, right? I just think the recipe's put together properly. A small business or privately owned business to take someone out of university, spend 2 years with them, and then put them through a professional year before they can see a client, generate revenue, and there's a big cost burden, there's a time burden, and they're probably not at the scale that makes sense. Like, large organisations could do that in the old days.
Okay.
Games and so forth, but so I think there's an infrastructure problem.
Let's continue the conversation with a few other stakeholders that are looking at same issue through their own different perspectives. Yeah. Perhaps starting off with you, Pina, reflecting that Alistair mentioned there might be another 1,000 advisors that will leave the sector by the end of the year. There are other reports of maybe up to 3,000 or 4,000 advisors that still don't meet minimum education standards that are required by 1 January 2026. Looking at it from your perspective, from an institutional perspective, but also from a distribution perspective, does anything come to mind with regard to any of the comments that Callister's made?
Look, I think, first of all, it's such a dilemma that we're getting so many advisors leave this industry, right? And that we can't get the industry to meet the education requirements. So for me, there's a problem there already. Maybe the benchmark is far too high. And, your comment around going for new graduates, I think is fantastic. However, if we had kept some of the people that have left the industry, particularly those that sought early retirement, if they were still in the industry, potentially it could have been their children and some intergenerational succession going on, where the children get encouraged by the parent, by the mum or dad who are in the industry, and you've seen a lot of that. You don't see as much of that anymore. So for me, I do think, going back to your comment, yes, the fact that the industry brought down commissions, I think that was a problem, because I think it's the cost to educate these people, put them through that professional year where they're not generating revenue, is really, really difficult. And just the experience that we've got in terms of AIA Financial Wellbeing, it's in its 4th year. It still can't yet afford to put forward a professional year, right? So you think about that, you think about large institutions doing it, they've still got to run a profit centre as well. So for me, I think there's a couple of things here. One is, I do think that the education bar is far too high. It's far too high for all financial planners. I think it is far too high. It's far too high for people to make that career change as well, potentially. And we used to see a lot of that, and we used to see some fantastic financial advisors, insurance advisors come through when they were doing that career change. And I also think, even, and I'm sure we'll get onto it later, we talk about the new class of advisor being an entry point, but you still need a diploma level there, and then that jump into sort of a full-blown financial planner still requires a degree, right? So you've got these massive hurdles. So for someone that's looking at this industry and saying, I want to get there, but I've got to start here, how long is it going to take me to get there, and how much education am I going to need?
All right, so you mentioned massive hurdles. If we can turn to the licensees in the room, Niall and Drew, what's your take from the dealer group perspective with regard to Ken's comment about the massive hurdles that exist, whether the professional year structure is actually something that is, I guess, needed, but is it structured in a way that's going to prevent more advisors coming into the sector? What's your take?
Look, I think it's a really interesting situation that we're in. I think we would all agree that becoming a financial advisor is an amazingly rewarding, flexible career, and we should have a lot more people wanting to do that for a living. Like, we have so much demand for what financial advisors do. It's quite incredible that we can't find people to do it. And I think it comes down to a lot of good few things. One is the cost. A lot of the businesses don't have a lot of scale. Yes, they might turn over a good bit of revenue, and yes, the profitability may be good. But
you're talking about dealer group businesses or
individuals that are licensed through either self-licensed or through licensees who want to grow.
Yeah.
For them to have to put someone on, put them through the PY, as Alistair and Pina said, it actually really sets them back quite a way as a business because of the cost. And it's also the unknown. Like, the reality is that Alistair mentioned that after 2 years, a big percentage of them are gone. I'm not sure if that's out of the industry or they've left the business that's in the PY, but either or is quite alarming. So I think businesses, it's a safer bet to not do it and just keep doing what you're doing now. And
so how do they grow? How do they recruit younger advisors into the industry?
They don't. That's the problem. That's why we're having this conversation. And they're going out recruiting the people who are already in the industry and bringing them in, but then they're costing more and more and more. And I think we need to find a way for people to be able to learn how to be a financial advisor in a much simpler way than they do today.
Okay, how does that resonate with you, Drew?
Certainly the capability infrastructure and investment required resonates with us as a licensee and also as an advice business. You know, as Alistair was highlighting, there are enough other headwinds in the industry. I'm okay with the education requirement as we see our team and our PY advisors progress through. But, you know, there's challenges at a product level. You know, there's increasing claims, cost of advice, lack of technology around. So for businesses, be that, you know, advice practices or licensees, having that capability and that infrastructure to onboard PY advisors to the best of the ability or the best of what would be otherwise required, it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of investment. Then you've got to provide those individuals with opportunities such as, you know, career progression, but also referrals and other support infrastructure. So I think the biggest challenge to us onboarding more professional year advisors is as an industry is actually the infrastructure and the other headwinds that exist.
Infrastructure and cost, or commercially it's going to be okay, at least for your setup?
Yeah, commercially it will be okay. We would like to onboard 5 PY advisors every year moving forward at least. But that does mean that those individuals need to be mentored. It does mean those individuals need to be supported by other people in the team, and it takes time and money. It's an investment.
Right. Well, we might get the Cali perspective before we come to our advisors and get your perspective from where the rubber hits the road. Keely, was there anything you'd care to add from what you've heard so far?
Yeah, I think so. One thing we did at the end of last year was we took the time to do detailed sit-down interviews with 50 advisors across Australia to really understand what is going on, both with risk advisors, people who used to be risk advisors and aren't anymore, and people who are interested in becoming risk advisors. And the takeaway that I had, the biggest one, was that of the people who are already risk advisors, 82% say, I'm all good, I've got so much work, I've got clients coming in the door, like I've got no problems, I'm happy with the size of my business, I know I can grow it if I want, but I don't need to, I'm just very happy where I am. Which I think reflects what everyone around the table has said about people are feeding themselves, but they're not thinking about how to build the profession, where their business will go in the future. And a lot basically don't really have a huge appetite to grow their business beyond where they are today. And so thinking about taking on the risks of younger advisors, the costs associated with that, what do you do, how do you find them clients, that the overall kind of feedback is that those conversations was, why would I bother? I'm very happy how I am. And so I think, how do you move a whole kind of cohort of people who are feeling happy and fed with the work they've got, and not kind of wanting to lean into the challenge of how do we actually meet the advice needs of Australians, how do we meet the needs of insurers to make sure that we're going out there and providing advice on their products. So there's small pockets, particularly in younger advisors. So really interesting, great to see you guys here. And there's a few different new innovative business models that we've seen where people are really coming in and they're kind of keen to give it a go and change things up. But for the majority of the advisors that we spoke to, representing in large part, there are advisors from licensees, but for those smaller firms as well, very happy with just how things are going. So no interest in changing. All right, so
there's no interest in changing. We might come back to you later to talk about what solutions you might want to suggest that are currently being mooted for the sector when we look at looking at the Crossroads, addressing the way forward. Now, you mentioned the younger advisors in the room. Phil is not that young, but Rebecca is.
I was going to say the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. I needed to point that out, Rebecca. I haven't done my research, so I'm not quite sure whether you're a millennial or Gen Z. How do you?
Gen Z.
Yeah, well, I just thought I'd ask. but you're more at the start of your career, although you're an established advisor. But you're more at the start of your career path. What's your take on things so far? Because I know you have a certain passion around this issue.
I do, and I agree with a lot of the comments made thus far. I believe it comes back to like a growth mindset, whether it's a PY program or not. It's about fat advisors metaphorically, wanting to push a little bit harder and grow their business. If you're looking to grow your business, you must recruit junior burgers, is what we call them, in terms of like young people coming through. And no matter what program or regime exists at that point in time, you have to come through it. And so for businesses who have a growth mindset, you do whatever you need to do to bring young advisors on. In today's environment, it's a PY program, it's looked different in years gone by. And so people and practices who are that way inclined and they're wanting to grow, they don't have a problem with it. Like, yes, there's technical issues and infrastructure and tech and all of that, but they just carry on. Motivation to get other people to grow their practices seems like it's a really interesting sticking point. I made a note, Alistair, when you were talking, it's a phrase that gets thrown out a lot in terms of the burden. And I think for growth-minded businesses, it's like I'm so tired of hearing.
You're not talking about Drew Burden, are you?
Pardon?
I'm not talking about Drew Burden. No, okay, fine.
You're off not look bad.
Okay.
But any business or any profession has to invest time and energy and money in training staff. I don't understand why our industry has gotten themselves in such a knot over this.
Okay,
and
so from
expectations are so aligned that you must do this.
And at Rising Tide, how's the structure there? Is it
We're very focused on growth, sustainable growth, and we are, to Keely's point, able to take on as many new clients at a pace that is sustainable for us as a business. We've got 2 PY candidates at the moment. One of them is mature age, one is early 20s. And so it's finding the right fit at the right point in time to grow. We would be looking probably 1 or 2 more in the next year or couple of years as well. But the program itself is not a headache, it is just what it is.
Okay, so infrastructure-wise, you're okay?
We are licensed under Acumen, so we get, I would say, probably 20% to your bell curve before Alistair in terms of 20% support, and then 80% that we're figuring out as we go.
Okay, so you're working through.
Yeah, and I mean, probably similar to feel like there's an advantage of having 2 rather than 1, that they can support each other, and also coming up, like working in a licensee group where you've got community, even if you're a small practice, that they can find each other inside the industry is important.
Okay, sure. So turning to you, Phil, your advice model, your business model is a very different setup to Rising Tide. So yours is a unique experience. Again, what's your take on things with regards?
Yeah, so as a young advisor, I know this forum is like let's state opinions, but I'd be really interested, Alistair, about you talked about you had 250 students in a room. We hired one, but we're still looking for more in that model. But we struggle to find people who are capable and are willing to fit that associate role. And Drew and I were talking about it earlier. How do we bring in new talent into our businesses? So I think there's from your point of view, it's like the industry is not hiring enough, and from as an industry, we're trying to find great people and we're struggling to find the right people. So I'd love to understand kind of your point of view around what is the logistical issue around that. Like, if we as a business want them and they're the type of people we want, are we just not doing good enough getting in front of more people? Are the students not being more proactive enough?
The problem, one of the bigger problems is that we have an ageing population of advisors. 61% of them are 1 or 2 man bands, and they are making double the revenue that they made in 3 years in a not risking a holistic business. So they're like, I'm going to offshore to virtual business partners. I'm going to have myself a high-paying job. So there are businesses like yours that come in to our events and go, right, we'll take the right person for the right place. But and the growth mindset is there, but just the demographics of the profession suggest that there's not so many people in that sort of group. So that's why we're not getting the volume, right?
Yeah.
But I agree. Then we've got the there's 200 students, and this is the part we focus on university students. We've talked about career changes, and I think leading into how we make that work is a whole other ball game and something we need to address. But they don't have a clear career pathway. They don't know how it's going to unfold. We probably don't do a really good job of I think Drew was talking then about, how long are you going to be in this role? What are you going to be doing in this role? How much are you going to get paid in this role? I think when you become an accountant, and I know we compared this all along, and you were talking about the profession we've always done this. You go to university, and then you get a job in a Big Four, or not, but Big Four, and then you go down this pathway of becoming a director or a partner, and the salary that you get all the way along, and the job, and then when you're going to get sold off to your client. You just it's really, really clear, and you're billable day one. And so therefore there's really, really great clarity on what it's going to unfold like, and you probably have that conversation better than most with the next gen when they come in. This is how it's going to unfold for you. You do your part, I'll do my part. This is how it's going to work.
Yeah, I think the concern from an advice business point of view. So our business, we've had 3 PYs just finish. We've got 5 associates in our business. We've got 2 interns and 1 P1 currently going through the process. So all relatively young team members going through that journey. A question we have as a business is those associates we want to bring onto our business. Do we have a pathway to move them into an advice journey in 3-5 years time? Because the future's uncertain in our industry. We don't know what's going to happen. So we have growth plans to have that for them, but we also have robust conversation of going, if we don't have that opportunity and we think you're ready, but we're not as a business, then we'll be happy to partner. Make introductions to other businesses who are ready to hire you. Because at the end of the day, or they make a decision, okay, I'm going to slow down my career progression 2 years until the business is ready.
But then where are they going though? Because you said 8, well, you'll take them, but you'll take the 1 or 2 and then 18% that will hire, and then, being one of the biggest insurance only businesses, 5, that's big, right? Yeah. But we're talking about needing thousands.
Yeah. And when I was referencing the infrastructure, it was more so that, there's businesses like ours that are picking up, a handful or more PY advisors every year, not 40 or 50 or 100 through a licensee. And, we're all in this room because we're progressive businesses, as opposed to the general cohort who may be, as you say, Keely, being holistic advisors that have really disengaged from the risk. The amount of portfolios that we see of unadvised clients, through the last 7 years is remarkable.
Yep.
And particularly in this current landscape where policies and products are being either, instability with premiums or product changes or increasing claims rates and what have you, unadvised policies is not an ideal place.